and welcome back to the President's Table. My name is Dan Jones, the President of Texas A&M University Commerce. And for our second segment on today's program, we're going to be talking about another innovative program here at Texas A&M University Commerce, and that is our Sophomore Year Experience. Our guests today are Mr. Dennis Cook and Mr. Jason Titus, both involved in residential living and learning. Dennis as the director and Jason as the assistant director for business operations, but he has another role we're going to get to in just a second. Before we get into the specifics here, let's talk a little bit about the sophomore year experience and why we do that. I know that we spend a lot of time with freshmen when they first arrive on campus because they need a lot of help. They need help getting adjusted to university life and finding their way around and advising, and you know, it's a whole new world for them. So a lot of universities rightfully lavish a lot of attention on the freshmen. Sophomores sometimes don't get the same level of attention, and I know that when you look at research on this, sometimes we as universities pay the price and they as students pay the price because they get so much, you know, care and feeding in the freshman year, and then all of a sudden they're on their own. So the sophomore year experience is intended to help address that.
Yeah, it's intended to do a lot of things. One of those things, like you said, is to make sure that the students who become, after their freshman year, realize that we are still here for them. They may not have, at that point, actually declared a major yet, or they may be switching majors, or they may be trying to refocus their whole thoughts, but we're still here for them, and we wanted them to know that. Also, too, we were getting a lot of freshmen were completing their courses and going, what's next?
Yeah.
And we're like,
more courses.
So we created the sophomore year experience to answer that question, what's next for them? And so then the basis of the program is that in their freshman year in their classes, they learn about critical thinking, that it's not just memorizing, but that it's actually connecting the dots and having a thought process. And so what we've done for the sophomore year is taken it to the next level, which is to use critical thinking through investigation, then having a global experience afterwards at the end of their full year of their sophomore time.
Right. Which is important on so many different levels. One is globalization. That's an important part of our university's strategic goal. It's number 5 on our list of 7 guiding principles, for example.
Yes.
But the other part of it has to do with a term that I've picked up and has become kind of common parlance. I'm not sure our viewers have heard it. We talk about high impact learning experiences. And the kinds of things that you're talking about are high impact learning experiences.
Yeah.
What is a high impact learning experience, I guess, is the question.
High impact learning experience in this case means that a student is definitely going outside their zone of, I don't know if you want to say comfort or knowledge or whatever it may be, but these students are taking it to the next level, not only in learning, but in their own personal lives. In the last 2 years, this program is 2 years old. Last year, I took a group to Zurich, Switzerland to discuss, go over the educational system that was there in Zurich. And then this year, it's blossomed to 4 groups, which we'll talk about here in a second. But what we're doing is definitely, for lack of a better melodramatic term, life-changing. Every one of these students who've come back from one of the trips so far this year and the trip from last year have just said, wow, I didn't know. I feel different, you know, and they can't even articulate it sometimes to the point of, but from the experience, what they've learned is that what it means to be a global citizen.
Right, right. Well, it is life transforming, you know, and when we talk about getting out of a comfort zone or zone of familiarity, whatever term you want to say, the whole idea is to put a student, anybody, in a situation where they can't predict 5 minutes from now exactly what's going to be happening. And they have
there are no cheat codes for
exactly, this. And they've got to kick in those higher order thinking skills and think, okay, I really need to pay attention to what's going on around me, you know, so that I'll really understand what kind of an experience I'm having. But that's high impact.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was interesting the first year when we were going through this. Fred Fuentes, who's from the Counseling Center, and I partnered together last year. And as we were studying education, one of the funny stories is that students were looking at scores locally, nationally, and then globally. And they noticed that nationally, you could cut the United States horizontally, and reading, math, and science scores were lower in the South than they were in the North. But then when they looked globally, Canada was in the top 10%, the United States was in the middle, and Mexico was at the very bottom. And so one student went, do you think it's the weather? Do you think the cold weather has anything to do with it?
Well, which is not a bad answer, actually.
Yeah. And so then we talked through that. But the reason they ended up picking Switzerland last year was that the Swiss is in the top 10% in the world, and the Swiss government is based on the U.S. government. And so they wanted to know why, if we had similar governments, were they doing so much better in education than we were?
Right.
And so it was fascinating for Fred and I to watch them make those connections and connect those dots,
right,
to be able to utilize critical thinking and understand what that all meant.
So you give them a problem, or they come up with a problem
Right.
themselves, and it doesn't have a simple or an easy answer.
No.
They really have to dig and test their own understandings to get to what's going on. Well, Jason, that leads us to what you've been doing this spring, and you just got back from a trip to London, right?
Right, yeah, we just took a group of students, there was 11 students, and Todd Greer and myself. We went to London. Our conceptual ideal was community, so in the realms of being a global citizen, what does that mean as a member of the community, and like who are you in the community, and who's the community as a part of you? So we talked about that in the realms of, you know, Commerce, Texas as a whole, nationally for our nation. But then when we took them into London, it was much more of that. You talk about the impact learning and impact education. It's that holistic ideal of, you know, it's not just what I'm learning about and what this like professor or administrator is telling me. All of a sudden, like I have no choice but to soak it in, and not just about this like academic thought, but actually about myself.
Right.
You know, like when I'm sitting on that subway station and I'm being really, really loud and I can tell I'm the loud one, like I'm making a huge impact on my community right now around me that I never saw it in myself before. I never saw that I thought I was a little bit more important before. And now I can maybe take that step back and really learn holistically who I am, which developmentally pushes me to the next level, even in academics as well.
Right. Well, you need to get the red badge of courage also for taking 11, 19-year-olds on an overseas trip.
It was fun. It definitely was fun.
How long were you gone?
A week.
A week?
Yeah. And some of them hadn't even been outside of Texas before.
Yeah.
More or less outside of the United States. So that long flight all the way over was definitely very entertaining.
Right.
You know, and on the way there, it's much more like kind of the hand-holding, making sure everyone's okay. By the end of the trip, they were their own individuals, their own adults, just, you know, loving London, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, coming back to Commerce and was so eager to bring all the things that they learned back, you know, to push it back into the Commerce community and show everybody how European they can be as well here at Commerce. So I think they're so excited to be back as well. But they do miss London. They keep telling me over and over again.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you know, some of them may be going back.
They're already asking.
Someplace else, yeah. Well, speaking of which, you got some more trips coming up.
We got 3 more trips coming up during May Mini, which they'll all spend a week. One trip, Jerome Osborne and our first faculty member who's involved, Gwen Weatherford, will be taking a group of a dozen students over to Italy, in which they will be talking about body image and actually working with some faculty at a university over in Italy, sharing research back and forth, as well exploring that culture and how it views the person's body image. So that I think will be incredibly fascinating.
About 10 seconds left. What are the other 2?
Panama, where they're going to be doing health education, and then Costa Rica, where they're going to be studying food as an economic staple for the country.
Great. I mean, again, compelling issues without easy solutions, and students really
and the fact that this is all volunteer too. Students don't get any credit or any other kind of thing other than self-satisfaction out of this.
And development.
Yeah.
Well, great job, and we look for more great things to come out of the sophomore year experience. Thanks so much, guys, for being part of the program.
Thank you.
And we will be back in a moment for the final segment of the President's Table.